Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Kvantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Crazy. All right. Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamadiriyed. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this first day of September 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 8, Withdrawal of the Cosmic Creations. Chapter 8, Bali Mahārāja surrenders his life. Text number, chapter 22, Bali Mahārāja surrenders his life. Text number 3. Okay, sorry about that. Bibhemi Naham Nidayat Padachuto Napasha Bandhad Vyasanad Todatyayat Naivarta Kritrad Bhavato Viningrahad Asadu Vadad Brisham Udvijayata. Okay. Babemi nahang nidayat padachuto Napasha bandhan vyasanadu ratyayat Naivarta kritrad bhavato vinigrahad Asadu padad vishamudvijayata Bibhemi naham nidayat padachuto Napasha bandhan vyasanadu ratyayat Naivarta kritrad bhavato vinigrahad Asadu bhadad vishamudvijayata Bibhemi nahang nidayat padachuto Napasha bandhan vyasanadu ratyayat Naivarta kritrad bhavato vinigrahad Asadu bhadad vishamudvijayata Bibhemi nahang nidayat padachuto Napasha bandhad vyasanadu ratyayat Naivarta kritrad bhavato vinigrahad Asadu bhadad vishamudvijayata Bibhemi naham nidayat padachuto Napasha bandhad vyasanadu ratyayat Naivarta kritrad bhavato vinigrahad Asadu bhadad vishamudvijayata Bibhemi nahang nidayat padachuto Napasha bandha vyasanadu ratyayat Naivarta kritrad bhavato vinigrahad Asadu vadad vishamudvijayata. Ananda. Bibhemi nahang nidayat padachuto Napasha bandha vyasanadu ratyayat Naivarta kritrad bhavato vinigrahad Asadu bhada vishamudvijayata. How about you, Governor? Bibhemi nahang nidayat padachuto Napasha bandhan vyasanadu ratyayat Naivarta kritrad bhavato vinigrahad Asadu bhadad vishamudvijayata. Okay, Naveen, no, not yet. Bibhemi naham nidayat padachuto Napasha bandha visanadurajaya. Naivarta krichan bhavato viningrahan. Asadu bhadan vishamun vijayata. Anyone online? Oh, I'm sorry. Babeminahang nidayat padachuto. Napasha bandha visanadurajayat. Naivarta krichan bhavato vinigrahad. Asadu bhadad vishamun vijayata. Anyone online want to chant?
Bibeminaham nirayat padachuto.
Bibeminaham nidayat padachuto.
Napasha bandhat vyasana duratyayat.
Napasha bandhat vyasana duratyayat.
Naivarta krichrat bhavato vinigrahad.
Naivarta krichan bhavato vinigrahad.
Asadu vadat vrishamud vijayata.
Asadu vadad vishamun vijayata. Chad, are you there?
Bibeminaham nirayat padachuto.
Bibeminaham nidayat padachuto.
Napasha bandhat vyasarad daratyayat.
Napasha bandhat visanad duratyayat.
Naivarta krichrad bhavato vinigrahad.
Naivarta krichan bhavato vinigrahad.
Asadu vadat prisham udvijayata.
Asadu vadan vishamun vijayata. Thank you, Vanessa. Okay, bibemi. I do fear. Na, not. Aham, I. Nidayat, from a position in hell. Padachutaha. Nor do I fear being deprived of my position. Na, nor. Pashabandhat, from being arrested by the ropes of Varuna. Vyasanat, nor from the distress. Duratyayat, which was unbearable for me. Na, nor. Eva, certainly. Artakritrat, because of poverty or scarcity of money. Bhavataha, of your lordship. Vinigrahat, from the punishment I am now suffering. Asaduvarat, from defamation. Visham, very much. Udvijay, I become anxious. Yata, as. Okay, translation. I do not, this is Bali speaking. I do not fear being deprived of all my possessions, living in hellish life, being arrested for poverty by the ropes of Varuna, or being punished by you, as much as I fear defamation. Purport. Although Bali Mahārāja fully surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could not tolerate being defamed for cheating a brāhmaṇa-brahmacārī. Being quite alert in regard to his reputation, he thought deeply about how to prevent being defamed. The Lord, therefore, gave him the good counsel to prevent defamation by offering his head. A Vaishnava does not fear any punishment. Narayana paraksarve nokotaśchana bibhiti. Srimad Bhagavatam 6:17-28. Om jnana-timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, this is Bali describing how he fears defamation more than practically anything else. More than he fears being deprived of all his possessions, which he already lost, living in hellish life, being arrested for poverty by the ropes of Varuna, are being punished by Vamanadeva, as much as he fears defamation. Now, why would defamation be so difficult for him to tolerate? After all, we don't commonly want, look for a name and fame. I mean, devotees are not saying, "Oh my God, I didn't get the highest accolade in this place." That's this the kind of maya, right? Is that to want to be glorified and and put in a very special position in society. So what is this all about? Well, one thing I was thinking about was how the devotee understands that not only his status within devotee community, but also his ability to preach Krishna consciousness, to reach hearts to the non-devotees and to convince them about Krishna, is dependent on the good name and fame, at least not having a big black mark on your record. Especially when you think about what it means to come into the society of devotees and to hear and chant, and what to speak. We've had experience of that in ISKCON, a very, very graphic experience. And that, most of you are familiar, at least to some degree, with the history. That, Srila Prabhupada, during his time of preaching, the 12 years when he was traveling and building the movement and, making the GBC and everything, he especially chose those devotees who were exemplary in preaching and in training other devotees. In other words, they were known for that, to be in the GBC, to be the managers of the movement. And in the last days, he also chose the most prominent to be initiating gurus. There's the famous conversation. I don't know if you know the history, but it's quite dramatic. In May of '77, there was a GBC meeting with Prabhupada in Vrindavan, and they approached Prabhupada, and it was really difficult because the effort was, and even the expectation was, that Prabhupada would be able to recover from this because Krishna can do anything, and why wouldn't he save Prabhupada so he could keep preaching, like that? So the devotees were begging him and writing him, please stay, please stay, please stay. So, but amidst all of that, Prabhupada, he was incredibly tolerant. I mean, it was supernatural how he was tolerating the whole thing. He was hardly eating, and it was very painful for the devotees to see that. But it became clear that, Prabhupada may decide to leave this, or Krishna may take him. So therefore, the GBC, with a subcommittee, a representative of the GBC, went to see Prabhupada and said, "Dear Prabhupada, we need to know exactly what you expect of us if you depart." It's very dramatic. And everything was being recorded. And so Prabhupada said, I will appoint some of you to be gurus. And it was clear from the way Prabhupada described it, because it was asked, well, are they going to be your disciples? Or are they going to be, no, they will be the disciples of my disciples. He used those very words, So that was, earth-shattering. And those who were so designated suddenly realized they had the weight of the whole movement on their shoulders, and Prabhupada was expecting. So the point I'm making is that over the next few years, Prabhupada left, and there were 11 of them. And the way they organized it was that there were zonal acharyas, which really was kind of bogus. But that's what the only way they could think to do it, because they all had their zones anyway. They were all GBC. So anyway, initiation took place. And if you look at the record, this is very interesting. The high point for distribution, actually, in terms of the per person, the average per person, going out and how much they were distributing, was in the early 80s. You look at the graph every time, the thing comes out. There was a tremendous, and this temple alone, when I came here in '89, this was already after so many years, but still the whole place was filled. They had a nice team of distributors. And I knew from history, from talking, hearing from Bhadri Narayan, he wasn't Swami at that time, but he was the president, that they had in the 80s, in the early 80s, they'd had 40, 50 devotees going out. And they were collecting so much Lakshmi that they asked Rameswara if we can, pay for the books, of course, but also buy an apartment building nearby, like Denver did. Denver bought, and of course LA, so they had places where they could have a whole household community, and they had, brahmacārī ashram. The brahmacārī ashram in LA, you may not know this, but I was there when it was built by a devotee who was overseeing the building. From scratch, and it was designed in that way that there would be two floors, one would be men and the women and everything, and at the bottom would be prasadam hall, and it was amazing what they were able to do. But Ramaswami Maharaj convinced Bhadri Narayan Prabhu at that time that no, we tried to save the BBT. In other words, the BBT was under a lot of stress, and to send all the money, to the BBT. So that's what happened, and that's why we have this little piece of land here. But anyway, the point I'm making is that when there was the crisis, and the gurus, most of them, of the first 11, were not able to maintain their vows properly and everything, it was a tremendous blow to the whole movement. You can imagine. Their disciples were many discouraged, and they left, and it was a real crisis. And it was saved by, the movement was saved in '86. There was the key meeting in Mayapur. It was at quincentennial, means 500th anniversary of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. You can imagine how important that was. And I was there, and I heard, I wasn't part of the meetings, but there were about 50 senior disciples of Prabhupada who weren't GBC and weren't gurus or anything, but they were experienced preachers and devotees. Rabindranath Sarup was a part of that. Jayawada Swami, I think it was a Swami at that point. And there were many others, in Ranjana, many who, and the main thing that they changed was that, we have to break it open. In other words, it can't just be these 11. It was too much pressure on them. There would be more gurus, those who are qualified and and designated by the GBC. So anyway, the movement survived, but it was touch and go, we call it, for a while. That it might dissolve, just like the Gaudiya Math did. So the point in relation to this verse is that in the society of devotees, your ability to preach, to nicely associate with others, and so forth, is dependent really on your character. In other words, that he's known, this person he keeps his vows, and he comes to the programs, and he's chanting nicely, and he's doing as he can see. But if someone gets we've had it here, if someone gets a black mark, like, oh my God, you're drinking, alcohol on the sly, then it becomes very difficult for that person to stay within the society of devotees, what to speak of preach and all these different things. So even though materially we're not interested in name and fame, we can see that, especially among Prabhupada, why do we say in that song we sing every morning, your name and fame is glorified all over the universe, right? It's not that you want it, but it's a tool, it's a prerequisite to have a position to be able to influence others. Srila Prabhupada, he was so pure and so well known for his sacrifices, that people would come by the thousands to hear him when he had those pandals in India, even at the beginning when he went in 1970, I think they started the first one. Many thousands of people came because he was known, and so it's important as part of the service to Krishna to. Of course, maintain your vows and to be regular in attendance and to be known as someone who's a serious devotee, and then you can feel very much at home amongst the devotees. I always give this example. Oh my God, this was when I was in LA in the 70s. It was probably 76, 77, And there was one devotee who I was working with. He was actually the main editor of the BTG in 1975, when Jayavarman was going on to the books. So he was doing the BTG. Then the marathon came in April, May, June of 75. And then he stayed. He traveled with Prabhupada and Pradyumna, and he was completely on the books. So I stayed as an editor of BTG, and this other devotee became the editor-in-chief, So he had a position there, and he was doing very nicely and everything. But then suddenly, he was married, but suddenly he was sleeping in the BTG offices. This wasn't a good sign. So there was some trouble in the marriage. I didn't know the details. But I remember we were in front of Rukmini Dwarkadish from Mangalartik, and there they could get very up close. They don't have the fountain there or anything. And I always like to stay up close, like you can see that well and everything, and he was there. But I was watching him, and it was heartrending. He couldn't look at the deities. He was standing there, he was looking this way and that way and this way and that way. Something happened, that he felt very ashamed, Anyway, and we've had that, throughout my career. I've seen that happen, and so fearing defamation, not necessarily for yourself, but for what how it will cripple your ability to preach to others, to new people, and your status within the society of devotees. It becomes very difficult to stay in the society of devotees. I remember I'll have a little position as a bhakta, not as a leader, but as someone who's giving classes to the bhaktas and things like that. So there's one fellow, he knew me, and he said, "Oh, I'm sitting on the stairs there, getting ready to go to prasadam," and he came up to me and he was very distressed, because this is about offending devotees, but in a sense it's in the same category. And he said, "Oh, I got mad at this one devotee and I punched him, and now I feel horrible. I feel I can't hardly chant." He said, "Oh, that's very bad. You have to go to the devotee and apologize, and bow down. That's get forgiveness." And I don't know if he was able to do that, but I kept looking at him. He had this black face all the time, and after a while we didn't see him anymore. So that's the dangers of offending. But this is a different kind of offense. If you break the regulative principles or something, and someone sees, "Oh, you've offended your spiritual master," and the deities by doing that, what to speak of the holy name. And so it becomes difficult to stay within the society of devotees, which is the worst thing, because by association we can maintain our strength. It's so important. So that's what the thoughts that came to mind about this, why he fears defamation. Because after all, Bali is a Maharajan. He wouldn't be a Maharajan, if he was defamed, because he couldn't keep his promise, So how did he solve it? Well, okay, he gave his head, and it's going to be explained in the following verse, I think, the following verses, that he regarded that, the possessor of something is more important than the possession. Well, all my possessions have been taken, namely the whole universe, but I'm still a possessor, I still have my body and everything, so giving my head, which means, full surrender. So obviously Vamanadeva, by the way, isn't it far out that next Thursday is Vamadeva's appearance day? And we're reading about Vamanadeva. You knew that. I just saw that it's a small miracle. Anyway, so it was just a lesson to me, how dangerous it is to be lax about offending devotees. And that the result will be that you can't stay amongst devotees. You'll be very uncomfortable, which is kind of a death knell for your devotion, because it's nourished by association. So these are some of the things that came. Now just this last verse, Prabhupada quotes this verse, half the verse, Narayana palaksave nokatashana bibhiti svarga pavarga nadakeshu abitulyartha darshanam. This is an incredible verse. For one who is Narayana para, one who is fully dedicated, pure devotee of Krishna and Narayan, you see, he doesn't fear anything, any situation. Svarga apavarga nadakeshu. Svarga is heaven. Apavarga is what? Brahmajyoti. And nadakeshu is hell. So all of these situations are equal. as long, as he can keep his devotional service. Whether I serve in heaven or hell doesn't matter, as long as I have service to you. That's why devotees, that famous verse, Kaivalyam Nadakayate, Tridashapura-Kashapushpayate. This is a verse by Prabodhananda Saraswati Prabhupada, often quote, especially that first phrase, in which he's describing the glories of a devotee and how he regards different things. So, Kaivalyam Nadakayate. The first phrase is that Kaivalyam means merging into Brahman. That's Kaival. That's a short Kaivalyam. Is like going to hell. Why? Because there's no Krishna, there's no Bhakta, you don't have a body or anything, you're just there as a living entity being conscious of being conscious. And there's no Bhagavan, there's no Bhakta, and there's no Bhakti. Put me in hell. I'd rather be able to, chanting Hare Krishna in a hellish planet than having no body, like that. And he goes on describing the nature of a devotee. And who is this devotee who's been empowered by the sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya? That's the last line. So, Tridashapur means the 33 million heavenly planets, like Akasha Pushpa. What is that? Akasha Pushpa. That's a flower in the sky. Right? There is no flower in the sky. In other words, who cares? It's imaginary to me. We have absolutely no... Does anyone here really want to check out Indoloka for about 1 million years and see how much you can enjoy there? No, right? Of course, we know in several places in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna condemns that. It's silly. If we're really serious, we want to regain that eternal life and our eternal position as servants of Krishna, and that's the goal. So what is it? So we know heaven may be a long time, but it's not eternal. What is that? Chine punye mache lokam vishanti. And I'll never forget this. Dharma was given class, and I think he described in the class, in some Purana or something, it describes what happens when you actually get kicked out of heaven. It's not like you just take a parachute down to earth. You go down, and while you're leaving, the Rakshasas are eating your body. Great, Was it worth it? All those being in your life. And then you're coming down, and you come down as a soul eventually. You don't have much body or anything, and you enter into the rain. Right, the rain comes down, and then it enters into some grain, and the grain is eaten by an animal, or something, and you get injected into the body of your next whoever it may be, or maybe a human being. Instead, you become a human being. Okay, you're in heaven. Was it worth it? And the devotees say, forget that. That's just a sky flower, just unreal. Then, very interesting, Durandendriya kala sarpa patali prokata dangshayate. This refers to the yogis, you see. The others, the demigod worshippers. And first the brahmavadis, those are mayavadis. They want to go and merge, So that's like going to hell. Heavenly planets, let's imagine, who cares, Then come, okay, what about those difficult to control senses? Well, now you're in the yogis, they're controlling the senses with their willpower, really. They're not getting the higher taste, right? So here it says, the difficult to control senses, which are like poisonous serpents, which can bite you, by taking your mind here and there and degrading you. It says, it's just like serpents who have their teeth removed. No fear, no problem. Maybe a cobra, but he opens his mouth and there's nothing there, he said, make him a pet, So that's very significant. Why? Because the devotee is using those very senses in the service of the Lord. And therefore, they're not your enemies. And your senses that are addicted to all kinds of sense gratification are your enemies. Of course, it begins in the mind. The mind can be your enemy, we know from the 6th chapter. But how is it your enemy? Because the extensions of the mind are the senses. The mind is known to be a sense. And when you're addicted or infatuated with a certain sense gratification, that keeps you bound to this world. So it's your enemy, as Krishna says. So, but when those very senses are used in Krishna's service, they become your friends. You see? So that's the negative. Durna and Kala Sarpatadi Prokata Dangstrayate. So then he says, this is a little different idea. The whole world is filled with happiness. Well, how is that? There's so much suffering going on. Vishrang purna sakayate. You know? Because you see Krishna's Leela going on everywhere. That's the point. You see, you know, there's a tree. Oh, that tree is a living entity, you know, who is covered by, you know, so much ignorance, you know. Oh, as Haridas Thakur recommended, you chant, you know, drop outside, so the plants, they can also benefit. Those, you know, if you're chanting sincerely and loudly, they can, you know. So anyway, you see Krishna everywhere, you see his pastimes going on, in Vishrang Purna Sakayate. And then what about the great demigods like Brahma and Shiva? Well, you know, we don't dishonor them, you know, but as far as worship goes, they're no more significant than insects. Now, how does one get to this point? Vidimahindra Kitayde Karunyakshakatak Vaibhavatam Tam Gauramevastamach. You become Karunyaksh, his merciful sidelong glance. You're empowered by his merciful sidelong glance. You see? Well, we're not his contemporaries. How do we get his glance? By preaching, by the Sankirtan. You know, then you get empowered by his glance, and all of these results come, which is ideal. So that's a little expansion from this, but this not fearing anything is a tremendous Narayana Nakutashana Bibhyati. Well, here we see Bali. He's not, you know, fearing any punishment. He doesn't have any fear because he has met his vow. He has given the 3 steps of land, the last one on his head, you know, and he's gotten the association of the Lord. He sees personally Vamanadeva, so he's perfectly willing to, you know, he's I think tied up now. They brought some shackles for him. So he's going to hellish planet, Rasatala, low planet. But Vamana is going to keep company. Who gets that, you know? To have not only deceived Vishnu, but have Vishnu keep company with you for billions of years. So it's very, you know, amazing story and memorable, the way Bali suddenly showed his real nature. You know, he's fighting with the demigods, he's taking all the devotees, planets, you know, he's the head of the demons. But when it finally comes down to it, his being the descendant of Prahlad takes precedence, and he shows his real nature as a great devotee, Mahāraja. So that's what I get out of this. It's a little, we have a few minutes till 8:30, but any comments or questions on some of these points? Dvijamani Prabhu.
Krishna, thank you for this
Hare
class.
Krishna.
I also heard, maybe you can add a little bit, is that when you're on the heavenly planets, you have a garland, and that garland is fading, and you know that the time when the garland is faded, you...
Never heard that one. It's not in the Bhagavatam.
Yes,
could be true. I mean,
like
I don't know.
Bhagavatam.
Did anyone know that? Ramapati, you know these things.
I might be wrong.
Yeah, really? Well, we don't have to worry. We get these garlands. Not fading, even after all this time. Yeah, I've never heard that, but that could be a cause of great anxiety. Hey, come on, you know.
I also had a question. In the Bali Mahārāja's dynasty, there were many asuras who, because of the enmity toward Vishnu, they achieved destination more exalted than that of many mystic yogis. 1 second.
What are you reading from there?
I'm reading from the description, the chapter. But the question is about how...
This is the chapter we're on? We just started?
Yeah, the same chapter. So, excuse me. We see that Bali Mahārāja is in a very unpredictable situation, and there's also examples of different asuras. If you just give me 1 second, sorry, I'm just going to find this. Sorry for this.
Seconds up, Prabhu.
maybe if anyone else has anything, I'll...
Okay.
Sorry for this delay.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, we got to get these microphones deployed better.
Regarding what Vijayamani said about the garland fading, I didn't remember that at all, but when I looked it up, there is something in the, I mean, maybe there's another reference, but at least the first thing that came up was that actually regarding Bali Mahārāja in 8th canto, 15th chapter, just talking about how Prahlad gave Bali a garland of flowers that would never fade. It doesn't say more there, there's no purport on it, but that just while you're looking for what you're looking for, that came to that, I saw that.
Uh-huh.
So in one of the comment purports, Bali Mahārāja was, it says, Bali Mahārāja was indeed a fully surrendered devotee, but even some demons who were not at all devotees, but merely enemies of the Lord, attained the same exalted position achieved by many mystic yogis.
You're saying the exalted position
as mystic yogis.
Yeah, because if you get killed by Krishna, that's very auspicious, right? You get liberation. And that's what the yogis are after. You know, they look after liberation.
So this is referring to an overall mercy of Krishna or Lord Vishnu, not specifically Vamanadeva.
Yes, that's one of the aspects of his mercy that, and sometimes it's very special, of course, with like Putana, you know, because of what the service so-called service she performed. But generally, they get a liberation. I think it's kind of merging liberation. They certainly don't have a position on a Vaikuntha planet, but that's seen as merciful. You know, a part of Krishna's mercy that they get liberation, which is very highly coveted. Shishupal, you know.
Yeah.
But devotees don't want that. You know, we want to be reinstated in our original position of loving service to Krishna.
Was there anything with Vamanadeva that happened, and he, with Asuras, that he liberated in this way? Was it mentioned here? Because
I don't recall being that in this. Yeah.
Okay.
This, it grew out of, as I mentioned before. The whole thing was Aditi, and her desire, and how to fulfill that. Well, Krishna appeared as Nrsingadeva and killed all the demons, and that was the usual system. But they had become powerful because of respecting the Brahman. I think especially, his name skipped me. He was the so-called spiritual master of Bali. Shukracharya. I'm sorry, getting old. Yeah, so he had to have a way of breaking that relationship, and that was inducing Bali to reject his instruction not to give the charity after he promised it. That's how that whole developed. So then things could proceed, and demigods could get back their planets. And in the course of doing that, Bali showed his true nature as a devotee, giving the third step. That's the way I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
Something else?
Regarding the garlands, the only other thing I could find is the description that garlands in Vaikuntha don't fade at all. In the spiritual world, they don't fade, but that's all I could find.
Okay.
I think it's in that description that demonstrates about the fall.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's...
All right, well, that's great. So tomorrow we'll ask him to expound on it a little more.
What was the reference that he used?
I forget. It was just so dramatic, though. I said, really? He will give class tomorrow. That's what I was saying. We'll ask him. Yeah. I don't know if Ramapati doesn't know anything about it. Okay. Vijay, you there? I guess he came to chant tonight. All right, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.